Hello, Father Fred here again today. Have a beautiful day here in Melissa, Texas, and I'll guarantee you it's better than what I've been seeing across the country. Tornadoes and floods. They said someplace might get 25 inches of rain in just a few days. I saw pictures on the TV, and they had water clear up to past the first floor on some of the buildings. I'm glad I live in this part of Texas and not on the coast. But we're blessed here in Melissa, Texas, to have this weather. Well, last week we had chapter 15. We had chapter 15, and it was he had confused Abram. Now, his name's Abram right now. It's going to get changed to Abraham, but it's going to be because God has a special plan for him. And God sometimes changes people's name to get them to have a different job. And it's kind of like whenever we're baptized, we get a saint's name, or when we are confirmed. And I know when I was ordained a priest, we chose a saint's name, and I chose Saint Francis of Assisi. He was my hero. I think he's God's hero. But his name is still Abram for right now. Now, God is calling him out of his hometown. His hometown is named U-R. That's a short name for a town, and it's called of the Chaldeans because the people there were from a tribe naming the name Chaldees, and so they called it of the Chaldeans. And so he calls these families out of there, this family of Abram, and he tells them, leave everything behind. It's almost like maybe they had strange gods. Maybe they had people that were just not that were not godly people. Maybe not the ones that God wanted them around them. But he said, come out of there and leave everything you got. Bring your family. And so he brought some people that were kind of followers of him. God hadn't contacted him yet, but I think he was such a humble person that people wanted to follow him just as he was. He says, okay, now you're coming out of It's here. You're going to go over to the promised land, Canaan, about maybe 200 or 300 miles. But to get there, you can't go through there because there's wild tribes in there that'll chop you up. So he's going to go 600 miles north to a place named Haran and stay there for a while, and then he will come down and go all the way into Egypt. Okay, now, so he's going to do that traveling, and he's been promised progeny and land, or offspring and land. Now, he knows when he's going to get the land. It says he's going to get the land after 400 years of slavery in Egypt. They call 400 years, it's also called 4 generations. So a generation for them, I guess, was 100 years. Now, he says he's going to give them these land, and he's going to give them all these people. And so Abram is confused. How's he going to have many nations when he doesn't even have a child? Now, I think he's 86 years old now, and his wife his wife would be 76 because she was 10 years younger, and they've had no children, and now God is telling him he's going to have some children. That's kind of, they don't know what to think. Well, Sarai, she gets a little uneasy, so she decides that she's going to take matters in her own hands. And with that in mind, now we're ready to go to chapter 16. That's what we're going to have today. So let's go into that. Let's look at this. This is verse 1, and it's entitled The Birth of Ishmael. Now Ishmael's he's going to play a very important part. This is for verse 1. Abram's wife Sarai had borne him no children. So we got that. We got that down. Now she had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. Now, why is it mentioning Hagar? An Egyptian servant. You're not going to marry Egyptians. That's just a no-no. But why is it saying now? Now she had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. Verse 2 is going to tell us what this is about. Sarai said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from bearing children." Now, a couple of things. When something doesn't go right, when something, you have illness or you cannot have children, they think it's because they've done something wrong, and this is punishment from God. God has not allowed me to have children. Secondly, if their husband and wife do not have children, for them it was always the wife's fault, not the husband. So she says, "The Lord has kept me from bearing children." It's all her fault. And she's going to want to get a child. And God's already promised her this if she'll just wait. But no, she doesn't want to do that. And so she says this, "Have intercourse with my maid. Perhaps I will have sons through her." Now, how are you going to have sons through her if she's the one that's pregnant? Well, they have in the Near East, this was done frequently. If the lady could not have children, she would offer her husband to a maid. Now, she had to do something, because if she didn't have a child within 2 years, he was free to divorce her if she didn't give him a son. But now this is not working that way with Abraham, because they've probably been married 50, 60 years and no children, but he hadn't left her. But this we're reading, "The Lord has kept me from bearing children." This is verse 2 again. "Have intercourse with my maid, perhaps I will have sons through her." And Abram obeyed Sarai. Now, to show that child that the maid servant has, to show that it is hers, when soon as that child is born, she puts it on her knee. And that is a symbol for them that is her child. Not going to be a good thing. Not going to come out well, though. Okay, now, now what we're going to do here, right here, this is all the J source. It's telling the story. We know it's a J source for one reason. It says the Lord. If it were the priestly, it would say God. We're going to be reading this, and it's going to be the J source for verses 1 and 2, but it's going to skip 3. Verse 3 is going to be from the priestly source. And the priestly source doesn't tell a story. It's just going to give some facts. And so verse 3 says this, "Thus, after Abraham had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, his wife Sarai took her maid Hagar, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his wife." Now, there are different levels of wives. For the husband here, for Abram, his wife, number one wife, is Sarai. She would be first class, we'd say. Then if he takes a concubine, or like this one, this lady this maid that's going to give him this child, she's rated as a second level wife. Now, he can just get rid of her if he wants to, but there has to be some reason for him to see about getting rid of the one that he actually probably would have to pay a dowry to get her. Okay, so we got this. Let's look at verse. I'm going to go from verse. First of all, I'll read verse 3 again. This is just thrown in there. "Thus, after Abram had lived 10 years, whenever we start reading and seeing about how long they lived and so on, that is the priestly source. "After Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, his wife Sarai took her maid Hagar, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife." Now, that is just stuck in there for some added information. It doesn't really go, but it adds to the story. But now, let's pretend it's not there. Let's go from verse 2 to verse 4. And it reads this way. Again, verse 2. "Sarai said to Abram, 'The Lord has kept me from bearing children. Have intercourse with my maid. Perhaps I will have sons through her.' Abram obeyed Sarai. He had intercourse with her, and she became pregnant." See how that flows from 2 to 4? She gives him the wife, And now the very next line says, he had intercourse with her, and she became pregnant. As soon as Hagar knew that she was pregnant, now this is a question here, I guess, her mistress lost stature in her eyes. Now, I don't know if it's stature in her maid's eyes or in her own eyes, or if this maidservant is now, look, I can have children and you can't. Maybe she saw that as a threat. Or maybe she's just thinking to herself, God, why would you not bless me, but you'll bless this maidservant? So anyway, for one reason or another, she sees that she has lost stature in her eyes, meaning that she doesn't like, she feels not worthy. Verse 5. So Sarai said to Abram, now here's an interesting thing. This outrage against me is your fault. Now, how is it his fault? He did father the child, but she's the one that arranged everything. But no, she's uneasy because she lost stature in her eyes. So now she's becoming kind of defensive, I think. And when we become defensive, we say things that sometimes we would never otherwise say that don't even make sense. But we read this. So Sarai said to Abram, this outrage against me is your fault. I myself gave my maid to your embrace, but ever since she knew that she was pregnant, I have lost stature in her eyes. I just don't seem that important. Now here's what she tells him. May the Lord decide between you and me. Why is it between him and her? It really should be between Hagar and Sarai. Abram was just the father of the child. He was just used to father the child. But she wants to put it like it's between you and me. So she wants to know, are you going to do something or am I going to do something? And so this is what Abram is we'd say milk toast. He's not got much backbone right here because this is his child. And he's going to let his wife do something wrong to his child. But later on, he's going to see it in a different light. And he's going to have that child. He's going to defend the child. He's not going to defend him right here. Abram told Sarai, your maid is in your power. Do to her what you regard as right. You do anything. Oh, it's like he doesn't even care that that's his son. Well, they don't know if it's a son or a daughter. And still in verse 6, Sarai then mistreated her so much. She didn't tell her to leave. She just mistreated her. She made life miserable. Sarai then mistreated her so much that Hagar ran away from her. Now, I wonder where she's going to run. I would bet, since she's an Egyptian maid, I bet she's going to run back to Egypt. But she doesn't get there. Because here's verse 7. The Lord's angel. Now, for the Canaanites, the Lord's angel is also the Lord. And we're going to find that in verse 13 when we get to it. This is verse 7. The Lord's angel found her by a spring in the wilderness. Now, when they go to the wilderness, it's always just where it's bad life. It's not, they got no good things happening. The Lord's angel found her by a spring in the wilderness, the spring on the road to Shur. And he asked, Hagar, maid of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going? She answered, I'm running away from my mistress, Sarai. It's kind of like she's having a vision. She's talking to God. And this is probably a Canaanite god. It's a god that she would be accustomed to, probably not the God of Abraham. Verse 10 says, verse 9, but the Lord's angel told her, go back to your mistress and submit to her authority. That is not good news. She probably would rather either die in the desert or get all the way back to Egypt, but she would not want to go back to be with her servant, with her master or mistress. Verse 10, I will make your descendants so numerous. Now that's the same thing that was told to Abraham, wasn't it? I will make your sons, I will make your descendants so numerous, added the Lord's angel, that they will be too many to count. That sounds like a good blessing, doesn't it? But it's not going to be such a good blessing. This is the sureness of the promise of God to Abram. He was also going to have the many offspring. And only in this one, it's not going to be Abraham's going to be the father. It's going to be Hagar is going to be the mother, even though Abram is the father. But this is going to be the side of the dark part of the family. They're not going to get to be in the promised land. Then the Lord's angel said to her, you are now pregnant and shall bear a son. She knows that she's pregnant. That's why she got run off. Maybe didn't know about the son. You shall name him Ishmael. Ishmael. And Ishmael means God hears. God hears because the Father, God, had given that name to her that she's given back to God. And does not sound like a real good, happy thing that God's going to do. For the Lord has heeded your affliction. He's heeded your affliction. So you think something's good going to happen. Well, here's going to be your son. Verse 12 says, he shall be a wild ass of a man, meaning he'll be wild and a free spirit. He's just going to be like a hippie. He shall be a wild ass of a man, his hand against everyone. He's not going to get along with anybody. And everyone's hand against him. And they're not going to get along with him either. Alongside all his kindred shall he encamp. So his kindred, they are going to be the desert people that live in tents, and they're going to be close by probably. And that's where he's going to be. He's going to be close, but he will not be in the promised land. Verse 13 says, to the Lord, now there it is. It was saying the angel of the Lord. Now it's the same thing, but now it's referred to as the Lord. To the Lord who spoke to her, now he's been speaking to her, and it's the Lord. She gave a name saying, you are God who sees me. Now it's unusual, that people give names for God. God usually gives names for people. But the author is just putting that in there in the story just to let us know what this name means. She meant, have I really seen God and remained alive after he saw me? Because they thought if they saw God, they would die. Now that is we still lack 2 verses, but that's the end of the J source. Now we're going to have the priest again. He's just going to give some facts. And it says this, Hagar bore Abram a son. That's just the fact. And Abram named the son whom Hagar bore him. She named him Ishmael, which means God hears. God heard her and gave her this son. And the last verse says, and this is what it's all about for the priest. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. So he's been gone, I think he was 75 when he left Ur. So now he's 86. So in 14 more years, they're going to have the son that God intended for them to have, rather than what the wife, Sarai, has planned for herself. They're going to have their own son, and Abram's going to be 100 years old when his child is born, and Hagar and Ishmael is going to be 14 because Abram is 86. Now, let's see, there is one more line here, verse 14. That is why the well, let me go back and get 13 for just a minute. To the Lord who spoke to her, she gave a name saying, you are God who sees me. She meant, have I really seen God and remembered alive after he saw me? And verse 14 says, that is why the well is called Bir Lahai Roi. It is between Kadesh and Bered. and then we have the priestly source. Now, there's a couple of things that I would like to give you, or not give you, but when you watch this, you can look at the bottom, maybe at the side, but I think they're going to be at the bottom. I've got 2 sheets that I would like that you can look on there and you can find out some things. You can look and you can see the family of Abraham. It tells who his dad. His dad's name's Terah. He's got 2 brothers, and it goes all down the list about how the children come until the very last ones of the descendants that he has. The other sheet is going to show you the trip that Abram makes. Abram and Abraham. In this upper corner right here, we read, and I'm going to read it to you, but you can pull it up and you can read it. But these are the journeys of Abraham when he comes out of Ur and all the places he goes. So first of all, remember, he starts in Ur and he goes north to Haran. It's about 600 miles. They could travel maybe 10 or 15 or maybe 20 miles a day. If they say 20 miles a day, that would still take him 30 days to go 600 miles, probably longer. That's if nobody gets sick. That's in Genesis that we've already had, chapter 11, verses 27, 32. And you can see those. And he goes from Ur, which is 50 miles south of Babylon. And Babylon's going to be important because Babylon's going to come and conquer the northern tribe, southern tribe. While they're there, the death of his brother Nahor. And Nahor says was 148 years old. And God calls Abraham to leave from there. And that's in Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, and in Acts of the Apostles, chapter 7, verses 2 to 4. And you can find all of this there. I'm just going to go over it for just to get it in your mind, just as they're traveling. They leave from Haran and they go to a place in Canaan called Shechem. Shechem is where Abram builds the first altar to worship God. It's about 400 miles from where they were in Haran. Then they cross the Jordan at a place called Succoth. That's in Genesis 12:1-7. He builds his first altar and he worships God. Then he's going to leave Shechem and he's going to go to Bethel. Bethel says is about 20 miles distance, and that's in the 12th chapter of Genesis. And he builds his second altar and he offers prayer. And then there is a famine in Canaan. And this is going to be something that we've already read it, but it's interesting. As he leaves Bethel, he goes down into Egypt. It's about 225 miles southwest. And now it's Abraham, and he's going to ask his wife to say that she is his sister. Remember that? Then they leave Egypt and come back up to Bethel, 225 miles, and Abram returns and offers prayer. And his nephew Lot, that went with him, they separated from each other there. They leave Bethel and they go to Hebron, which is about 35 miles, and he builds his third altar. Then they leave Hebron and go to a place called Hobath. It's near Damascus. That's way up north now. They're going up north, about 160 miles. And Abram gets separated from Lot, and some kings come and conquer Lot, and they carry him off, and they're going to bring them back. They bring back the robbers, they bring back Lot, and they bring back a whole lot of possessions. Well, that's it for chapter 16. It's interesting. Abram, becoming Abraham, he's going to cover he comes on the scene right at the end of chapter 11, and he's going to be on the scene up through chapter 24. So he's got nearly a fourth of the whole 50 chapters. He is one big, important dude. God bless.